Well, to this, the Democratic Alliance has given President Cyril Ramaphosa 7 days to outline the COVID-19 vaccine plan or face court action. Now, the party describes government's procurement of the vaccine as a failure. South Africa is expected to receive 1 million doses from India's Serum Institute. DA leader John Steeinhuisen joins us to discuss this even further. Mr. Steeinhuisen, thank you so much for your time and good morning to you. I mean, you have compared government secrecy to, the vaccine rollout plan to the rollout of the antiretroviral plan, for the country's HIV program. You're not satisfied with this. I mean, what are your concerns with regards to what government has been telling the country so far?
The concerns, and good morning to you and good morning to the viewers, the concerns relate to the fact that I don't think government has been nearly transparent enough with citizens. The President in his address last week assured South Africans that his government had been in bilateral negotiations with vaccine suppliers for over 6 months. After Pfizer's leak yesterday, it's very clear that this was not the case. Certainly having spoken to other suppliers, Johnson & Johnson, etc., have also come up and said government left it way too late. So that's the first problem. The second problem is now that government's in a scramble to obtain the scraps of leftovers of vaccines around the world, they need to have maximum transparency with the people of South Africa. And in the last clip you've played, it's very obvious that even the health minister is unsure about that rollout plan. South African citizens are facing probably the biggest health crisis in democratic South Africa after the HIV/AIDS pandemic, and need to have full information around what government's doing, when it's going to happen, where we're getting it from, and what it's going to cost. And those details are shrouded in absolute secrecy. Much like the TAC approached the court to compel government to release its ARV rollout plan, we are going to compel the presidency and the government to release the COVID vaccine rollout plan in South Africa to ensure that citizens are brought up to speed to know exactly what we can expect from the elected government.
And I understand you've given the president 7 days exactly to respond to your letter. What exactly do you demand in the letter to the president?
There's a number of things that are set out in the letter, and these are all things that should have been a matter of course from any democratic government, and certainly the type of information that's being shared by democratic governments around the world. And that includes things like, what is the timeline? What is the rollout plan? How is it going to be distributed? Who's going to be targeted first? What is the cost of it? Is there sufficient cold storage in chain? What are the implications of the Eskom load shedding on the cold chain of the vaccine? Do we have enough medical personnel? And importantly, is government going this alone, or are they going to involve the private sector in a mass vaccination? This is going to be a logistical exercise, the likes of which South Africa hasn't seen. Government's ambitious target to vaccinate 40 million South Africans by the end of the year. That's over 130,000 a day. It's upwards of 4 million a month. That is a huge undertaking. Government simply can't go it alone. And our suggestion is that we adopt, instead of a government monopoly on this, that we adopt a whole of society approach that includes civil society, includes the private sector, it includes business, in ensuring that when we do obtain vaccines, that the rollout is as seamless as possible. Leaving it to government alone, we've already seen what happens with that. We're sitting with load shedding precisely because government has a monopoly on distribution and supply. We end up with a textbook crisis at the beginning of every year because there's a monopoly on government distribution of textbooks. Yep. We can't afford to have egos in this. We need to make sure it's a proper rollout.
Well, with that being said, I mean, I understand the Western Cape government has also planned out a strategy for a vaccine rollout. It seems the health minister, Dr. Willem Kize, is not too happy about that, saying it sort of almost defeats the whole purpose of, national government doing, its work. What's your response there? Do you feel like the Western Cape government might be overstepping here and not allowing the national government to, implement their plan?
Absolutely not. I think that the first duty of any elected government is to ensure that its citizens are kept safe. None of the other rights enshrined in the Constitution are achievable if your citizens' lives are in peril. So the first thing to do is to make sure your citizens are safe, and that is the first duty of the government. I also think that it's very petty of national government to be quibbling about where the vaccines are coming from. If there's an approved set of vaccines, we should be welcoming anybody bringing those vaccines into the country. Surely the goal is to get as many South Africans vaccinated as possible in the shortest possible time. That's the only way we're going to hit the herd immunity, and it's the only way we're going to get out of this lockdown crisis, which, as we've seen, is destroying the economy and making economic recovery extremely difficult. So, the other point to make is that health is a concurrent responsibility in terms of the Constitution, and I think the province is well within its rights to say, look, government, you've dropped the ball spectacularly here. We have a primary duty to our citizens that have elected us as the government in the Western Cape to pull out all the stops to make sure that they are safe and that their lives and their livelihoods are protected.
All right, Mr. Steeinhuisen, we'll leave it there. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.